Hi everyone, thanks for being on time. Good early evening. Thank you for joining us on Zoom this evening. I'm Ime, a librarian at Library at Orchard. So for the last month or so, Library at Orchard has been home to Studio SML's Abstract Creatures exhibition presented by the Press Room. So if you haven't caught it, the exhibition will be up until the 3rd of July. There are free stickers, so please head down if you have the chance to. As part of this running exhibition, we are happy to have this Zoom panel, A Beautiful Life, with the design studios Onlewo and Forest and Whale. Today's session is also moderated by none other than Kelly Cheng of the Press Room. So before we begin the program, just a brief introduction for the Zoom functionalities. There's a dedicated Q&A segment at the end of today's session. So please type your questions in the Q&A section that you see at the little button at the bottom of your screen. Also note that this session is recorded and will be made available on the Design Singapore YouTube channel for everyone's future viewing. So without further ado, I will just hand the time to Kelly to share a little bit about Studio SML, the exhibition, and the panelists you'll be hearing from today. So Kelly, please.
Thanks, Ime. Okay, maybe we flip to the first slide. Yeah, that's right. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us in this talk session of Studio SML. So just to share a little bit, Studio SML is a documentary and archival project that hopes to document the journeys of local architects and designers and reveal the sacrifices, struggles and rewards of being a Singaporean creative. Studio SML talk sessions like this hopes to promote open and candid conversations about the design industry. Our vision is to educate the general public on design matters and nurture a greater appreciation for the work that designers do. Next slide. And yes, this is the exhibition that Ime was sharing about. It's called Abstract Creatures. It is a traveling and art installation that serves as a physical touch point to the website Studio SML. Each sculpture is actually a metaphor for a specific design studio, capturing the personalities and qualities of that founder. Catch the show now at Orchard Library, which is on its last leg after about 10 locations or so. So do visit Orchard Library before the 4th of July and catch the show Abstract Creatures and check out our Studio SML website, www.studiosml.net.sg. Okay, next slide. Yep, this is the exhibition, and then the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to share with you today's panelists. First of all, we have Onlewo, and then we have Forest and Whale, and of course myself. I'll be the moderator for today. So an introduction on Onlewo or Onlewo in Chinese, which translates into a peaceful nest. They are a wallpaper, textile, and interior design company founded in 2016. Through their designs, they share our Singapore stories with the world through commissions from Patek Philippe, Bulgari, and New York Botanical Gardens. They have also represented Singapore at London 100% Design, Indigo Brussels, Singapore Inside Out in Tokyo. Without much further ado, I would like to welcome Mike Tay and Eugene Yip, the founders of Onlewo, to share with us about how they use their products and design to create a beautiful life.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for having us. And this topic we find very meaningful, and glad that we have a chance to share our work and what inspires us. So to start off, as designers in surface print and interior, we always aim to achieve a sense of balance, clarity, a sense of belonging in the space that our clients live and work and ourselves too. So Onlewo, as Kelly has mentioned, in Cantonese actually means Onlewo. Yeah, and so a nest that we hope that through our work, we can create a space that inspires, brings joy, create conversations with guests and fellow living members. reflect on our roots as to also connect meaningfully with others. So over the course of last 6 years, we've been trying to celebrate the beauty of life by looking at aspects of life that actually touches me personally as a designer, celebrating my life as well as and what things and places and cultures that shape me into who I am. So moving on, I have the pleasure to share our first design, one of the first designs. It's actually Tiong Bahru, where we used to live for about 7 years. Tiong Bahru. Okay, so over here, this few images kind of sum up our journey there, the community. The pattern is very much about the life of the community, the story of a cat that is very famous, as well as things found in all corners of this neighborhood that inspires and helps us to appreciate the beauty of life in many ways. So on the top left corner, you see Bob. Bob is actually a very special cat that belongs to the community, people who lives in the village, which we call it. Everybody will know who is Bob. So Bob has a Facebook page and he has lots of followers. He knows which house to go to get fed, where to get pet and loved by people. So I think where we are always inspired and coming from is always looking at connections. And I think that that's how we appreciate a sense of beauty. And in this case for Tiong Bahru, then on the where we live, I also shared a picture of the home interior, which is on the right side. The unit we're living at in Wat Street, and you can see at the back is actually a courtyard where natural light flows through. It is really indeed a beautiful place, and I'm thankful that it's actually also this place that started Onlewo, because one day I was just looking at the fact that we are having such a beautiful time there, and what actually inspired and what actually shaped and gave us that experience. So looking at all the corners, naturally we are also fond lovers of vintage things like the window grills that you can find in the shop house and the walk-up units, as well as the activities, the temple, the market there. So along the way, this pattern connected many people, from customers that come in to buy an ottoman to commercial projects where we supply wallpaper and fabrics for one of the corners for their office, as you can see in the middle top photo. So of course, Tiong Bahru has a lot to offer. Beyond that, I also created another pattern that holds close to many Singaporeans' hearts. And this one is actually pretty much inspired by the fact that on weekends, whenever friends are here, we never fail to go and go to the back of our unit, and there is a shop that makes kueh pastries at the back and sell it fresh at the front. This store, the shop name is Galicia. I'm sure, I think some of you may realize actually, sadly, they are closing soon because the couple have been running it for many years and they've decided to retire. So all these quickies that we share, it stirs stories. It stirs about how people actually remember fondly about whether is it at school, at canteen breaks, or is it like my auntie, when I was young, she never failed to buy some kueh in the morning as breakfast for the family. So kueh tao, it is actually symbolically not just a pattern, but it is very much about love, life, and as well as things that are simple yet means a lot. And that's where very much is our key motivation in telling stories like this. So we attach a little clip, a video of gift sets that we also offer. Here is a set of table runner and coasters. Moving on, there's one more interesting print that I would like to share with you. This is a Peranakan story. It actually holds very close to my heart. The reason is because my other half of my mom's family, actually some of them were Peranakans and are Peranakans. How I came to realize was because since young, I've been always very close to my mom and helping her with a store. So when she's speaking to her customers, she spoke very good Malay, and me and my siblings were like very amazed and also very puzzled how come she can speak so good Malay. And then we found more about stories about her family, her mom, and both are very strong-willed women that has big love for the family. And so this pattern very much is also about them. And the other special part about it is that it is actually our first collaboration with Peranakan Museum. So a pattern was created to showcase the last exhibition before the museum closed for renovation. It was called Amek Gamba. So over here, we definitely see that there is a strong connection from our customers with the pattern. So we have like fondly customers that buy fabrics and make into nice dresses for themselves. And on the bottom left, actually, this is one of the projects with Spotify as well, where we decorated part of their office with our fabrics that tell stories of Singapore and culture. And on the right side, from a main pattern, we also lifted out and created a Peranakan spoon pattern, which was also made into shirts. Yeah, so that is also a very special pattern that we're happy to share. Okay, the next one is City in the Garden. I think Singapore has really lovely landscaping and a mix of more natural parks and very organized, and then planned cityscape that is closely filled with nature. And how this came about was that there was a part in my life where I was living near to Botanic Garden. So my best part of the period there is always in the morning walks. And I'll bring my dogs and walk from near the Stevens Road, cut through to Delvey, and then cut through to Botanic Garden, make a loop, come back to Tanglin, Orchard, and then going back to Stevens again. So this whole belt is really lovely. I mean, it is also a quiet time for me to think and to kind of be still and allow inspirations to float. So City in the Garden actually captures the greeneries, the landmarks in this area that covers like Botanic Garden, the colonial shophouses, Singapore Museum, Iron Orchard, and the Newton Hawker Center. And inside there has a little figure of a guy and a dog. And actually there's actually me and Mimi, which you see right now in the middle, bottom photo. Yeah. So attach a little clip, a video of plate. So we do gifting as well. This is a bone china plate. Yeah, and we're happy that actually along the way, customers, not just local, even expats, they are very strongly I mean, they connect very strongly with this pattern. So recently we have a customer. The family has relocated back to Germany, and after settling down, they actually contacted us again and requested and they ordered a few rolls of wallpapers for different parts of their home in Germany. And one of them is actually this city in the garden, simply because I really reminded them about their happy times in Singapore. And I think that's the biggest reward for me and for us. It's actually through creating works that move, to connect, and to share with people in the community. So the last but not least, this one talking about morning walks, then I've continued to do that, even though now I have moved on to the east side. So mornings and evenings, sunsets and sunrise, I find a lot of inspiration and energy. Emotionally, it's really, I mean, it really works for me as well. So one of these mornings when I was there, I was captivated by this lovely bird calls. So I find that really beautiful. Although, yeah, it is in a partially concrete jungle in the sense that, but I must say that I think design itself, apart from being there to serve as a function to improve people's lives, I think the other part of it, I hope that I could, through our work, we are able to look at how to let our work help connect people with things, places, and nature around us. Because I believe that design should also serve to heal, to recharge our emotions, and to make us stronger person. So over here on the left side, you see a recent project where a customer ordered this as wallpaper. Yeah, and yeah, so in the middle, just the top is actually a shot of the same pattern, but printed on the cotton satin, making into shirts for some customers. And below is another nature-related pattern called Million Greens, which is also I mean, we were very delighted and extremely happy that when we came across the news that our government is actually planning, and I believe they have started to look at planting 1 million trees in Singapore to fight the climate change. Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. This is what we are prepared for today's introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Eugene. So now we would like to introduce our second speaker for the day, Forest and Whale. Forest and Whale is a multidisciplinary design collective that focuses on products and spatial designs based on sustainability, circular systems, and future envisioning. As a recipient of the DesignSingapore Council's Good Design Research Grant, Forest and Whale developed innovative alternative packaging to combat wasteful takeaway boxes. Their accolades include Singapore Good Design Award, Maison et Objet Rising Asian Talents, and the Red Dot Design Award. And without much further ado, I would like to pass the virtual mic on to Wendy Chua, who is one half of Forest and Whale for the presentation today. Wendy?
Thanks, Kelly, for the introduction. Okay, let me pull in my slides. Everything's good? All right, so I will begin. Yes, so when I was given this topic by Kelly, this quote came to mind. And I think also Eugene mentioned the word balance, and I think beauty has a lot to do with balance. Bruno Munari is an Italian design master, and he once said this, that when the objects that we use every day and the surroundings that we live in have become in themselves a work of art, then we shall be able to say that we have, well, there's a typo there, we have achieved a balanced life. And I think that is, for me, what beauty is. And as a designer, how I could try to bring beauty to the daily life. Yeah, so that's me. I'm currently based in Berlin doing a master's program while I run my practice. Trying to figure out what I am as I was preparing for this talk. And while I'm a student right now, I'm also a teacher for many years in creative pedagogies. And I'm also very interested in research in general, like curiosity for everything around us. And the kind of work that I'm currently pursuing is interdisciplinary design, where I can look at other fields through the lens of design. I'm also very interested in anthropology, and we do that a lot in our design work, which I will share more later. Creative pedagogies, craft, whether it's in the past or in the future, how they can continue to exist, materials and processes. And if I look back in time, like how I got to be here, perhaps a lot of my interest in design came from the fact that I'm the daughter of a seamstress. So I grew up going to People's Park, being very used to the textures. I actually grew up in Tiong Bahru, so it was really nice to see Eugene sharing. And I'm also a third generation of a hawker family. Of course, I'm not a hawker, but I have helped out before when I was young. And I think that also strongly connected me with the hawker culture in Singapore. And now I'm part of this research cluster called Matters of Activity, where we look at active materials. Yeah, so that's a little bit of background about me before I began. Yeah, so Forest and Whale, which I run with my partner, Gustavo Maggio, is really about the kind of practice that we do, which goes from products to spaces. But if I really have to explain it, it's about having one foot in the factory. We visit a lot of factories to do the work that we do, and having one foot in the community because of the kind of participatory design work that we do. Yeah. And sometimes these tools are completely different worlds. You know, we do products for companies and we go to factories, and then we also do participatory work for communities. But sometimes they can come really interwoven. So like for this collection we did for Scantic for their Japan audience, we actually went to Japan to do ethnographic studies, visited their people's homes to understand how they live before we designed the collection. So beauty for me comes in forms. I mean, partly because that's really my training. How do I create beautiful forms? And looking back, you know, this is a table that I designed when I was still a student in NUS that was later produced by Elena Rose. And this is a recent chair that was designed together in collaboration with my partners. And it's really an evolution of the kind of work that we've been doing over the years in furniture design. And when I try to think back about that table that I first designed, I immediately think about the book that I was very drawn to around the same time by Bruno Munari, where he was dissecting what a tree is, what's the anatomy of a tree. And it's really about that Y branch, right? Every tree has the Y branch, actually. And with this table, we were trying to redesign the tripod structure, which is the most fundamental kind of structure, by inverting one Y joint over another, right? And evoking the branches of a tree. But aside from pursuing such form, we find the beauty is also a lot in the making. When I was designing this exhibition for the centennial showcase of Sori Yanagi, who is a design master from Japan, I visited his studio and spoke to his apprentice who was with him for 27 years. And he said that for Sori Yanagi, he believed that everything that is to be used by hand should be formed by hand. So as you can see, all these tableware that he designed, he had sort of a ceramic studio a ceramic workshop in his design studio where he can shape every single piece that he was going to design. So he can actually feel how it was being used. And I think that was also why I'm very drawn to the beauty that is happening in the making process, not when the final outcome is conceived, right? So over here, you see that when I saw Mr. E, who's a machinist in Jalan Besar, lading a piece of aluminum rod that shaving as it's appearing is so beautiful that led us to design a silver rose label pin later on. But I actually found it even more beautiful in this very moment when it is just peeling off the source material. And I guess that's how we were drawn to documenting the kind of work that's happening in the workshop that we usually don't see. As well as all the different tradesmen and craftsmen that was in the Jalan Besar Auto and Ship Repair District. And it's not just about the makers, as in like the human makers. I think it's also very much about the non-human makers. So when we were doing these rug collection for the rug maker that's based in Singapore, we also went to the factory and understood the material. And this collection obviously is inspired by nature. But that's when I found out that actually most of the wool for the carpet industry came from New Zealand, like 90% of it comes from New Zealand. And there's all these different sheep species that produce the type of wool that's used in carpet. And of course, there's many types of sheep species, but only merino, which is at the top right, is what we most know, what most consumers would know, like merino wool. And simply because it's very fine, it's very expensive. So the price, gives it more importance that you want to separate out the merino wool from the rest. Whereas all the other wool actually get mixed together. And those long wool are used specifically for carpet making. And I often wonder when I look at these different types of sheep species, like these are the non-human actors that are producing the things that we use every day. And maybe we should also take time to be grateful, right, for their hard work in producing the material that we use to make the things that we use. A lot of the work that we do is also about hidden beauty. Like in this lamp that we designed, we started off with crumpling a lot of paper and shining a light on it. The topic that was given to us was, what is the spirituality of design, specifically the spirituality of Asian design. We were going to bring it to Milan Design Week. And it was such a like almost intangible kind of topic. And so we started to play with lights because we felt like that has a lot of spirituality and we wanted a light that was very soft. We were playing with different types of crumpled paper and we stumbled upon a paper that has a reflective surface on the inner side. And so it creates a very beautiful effect when we're able to put a diffuser on. Yeah, so this was, in some ways, the light effect will not be visible without a play or study of materials. And this is another example of a hidden beauty. It's a new collection that we've designed for Scantic that's launched this year. And it really comes from the pandemic times when people are working from home and you see a lot of this kind of combination where dining tables become office tables and it's no longer just a table for meals, but it's also a place for work. And you need a very, very good office chair. And this office chair often have problems just tucking in under that table. And so we spent a lot of time actually redesigning the understructure of the table so that the office chair can tuck in with the armrest. And these are the details that sometimes, if you look at a simple table, you may not notice, but for us, functionally, it is a very important detail to take care of. Another example of hidden beauty, this was a material that we found in a trade fair. If you look at the top left-hand corner, there is actually a ceramic substrate that is found in all the cars, all the motorcycles, vehicles around you. It is found in a catalytic converter and it catalyzed the reaction of converting the carbon monoxide to carbon dioxide. And usually only car mechanics would see it. And we found a material we thought was actually really beautiful because it's ceramic. And we thought, what can we do with it and whether we can turn it, instead of diffusing exhaust fumes, to diffuse scent. And so by shaping it, it was also very easy to shape. We were able to dye it to the colors of the lemongrass to create a scent diffuser. And because it's an unglazed ceramic, it actually was very, very porous and very good for absorbing scent. I think beauty is also in the familiar everyday life. I think the word here, the key word here is familiarity, right? Like you can come up with new ideas, new innovation, but you always need a little bit of familiarity to understand what that product is meant to do. So I'm going to show you a short video of us doing ethnography with a hawker who is second generation kopi hawker in Hong Lim Food Center.
以前的人是用铁罐的，还有那个纸袋，没有那个叫什么啊？什么叫分 cup 啊？什么分 cup？ 大家分嘛。那时候的技术还没有降好吗？我叫阿华，我做这行差不多45年了。我们是从路边搬过来，我就帮我父亲做，15岁做到现在60岁了。 就说你的 old cup， 以前的年代，我的父亲没有教我，是我自学的，慢慢冲，慢慢冲，冲不好我就倒掉，冲不好我就倒掉，不好喝嘛，没有那个 standard 嘛。像我现在很容易的，我多少粉我打很快的，那经验呐、什么都要经验呐、那些老人家传统是要用那个铁罐的，他们要那种比较传统的味道，饭罐会比较骚。 又好喝，现在的东西没有那种古早味，好像这2个咖啡，你这个杯跟那个塑胶杯，你冲出来不一样的。铁罐啊，每天都是用完的，我用我自己的铁罐，有多少就用多少，没有就放纸袋咯。这个是说废物利用。 很容易的嘛，你弄个洞，那个绳穿进去就可以用了嘛。丢掉了也是丢掉的，不过可以用多一次。环保，环保重要啊，不然你那些你看那个海边很多那种纸杯啊，那个塑胶瓶的东西啊，会造成那些鱼去吃啊，它的肚子里面有那种塑胶的东西啊，还有那个水草啊，会造成很多伤害，真的。所以我建议是说大家环保了哦，用自己的铁罐。 哦，还是去买铁罐来用，不像那个塑胶杯里面有一个蜡，你冲咖啡烧下去啊，它好像一个油浮在那个咖啡的上面的，喝多不好，有一种 plastic 的味道。我还是建议人家用自己的罐啊来装比较好，那个会保温嘛。他带他的罐来，他省1毛钱嘛。
Yeah, so that is Ahua. We were interviewing him for this project on Reuse Lab that was done through Reuse Lab that we started last year. It began as a project when we saw all the disposables that was created during the pandemic, and we were of course very attracted to all these reuse cultures that already exist in the past. Since sustainability is clearly not a new concept at all. In fact, life was a lot more sustainable back in the past. And we were really studying what makes this tin really actually good for carrying coffee. And he mentioned it a few things himself, like how the coffee actually tastes better. Like he feels that if you really care about the taste of coffee, you should take it away in this tin. Of course, in a present day context, there's a lot of problems with it. It could accidentally open. It has very, very sharp edges. You need to know how to use it. And it's really, really hot to touch. And so we created an updated version of it. And I think here what we want to talk about is how important it is to think about a social connection in a new design, and sometimes that even sustainable practice needs to have a cultural icon that we can all be familiar with and we can connect with. So that project led us to think a lot more into beauty in the kampong spirit. Right, because Ahua was telling us that, well, he and his wife can retire. Their children are more or less all grown up and working, but they just enjoy going to the kopitiam, not kopitiam, actually the hawker center, because it is their kampong. And it made us started to think about how important it is, all these neighborhood coffee shop and neighborhood hawker center is for the communities, especially the coffee shops, because that's a place that you go very regularly. And so that's how we began a project that is supported by the Lian Foundation that is on bring community care into the kopitiam. You may have seen that there's many senior activity centers that are modded to look like kopitiam spaces. But still, they sometimes find it hard to attract certain types of seniors. Like some seniors do not want to step into a senior activity center. And we find that actually a coffee shop is a place where many seniors hang out, especially senior males. And we see the increasing problem of isolated seniors. And we thought, what if we can hack the kopitiam space and reverse it by bringing the community care into the kopitiam, right? So we just started this project and we're still in the early phase of ethnographic interviews. So this is actually them in Singapore while I'm on Berlin side in a conversation with them. The one on the left is Michael, and he's the owner of the coffee shop that we're working with. And this is actually in the community that we live in Kampung Baru, where there's a very, very beautiful bird singing community. And we're also starting to understand that how bird singing as a pastime for seniors is really a practice that helps to cross, cultural, racial divides and to bring actually the community together. Whereas this lady at the bottom right is the hawker of the Zha Cai Fan, right? The economical rice store, which is so important. It's really the community kitchen for the entire neighborhood. And she actually told us one story. She told us that when she negotiated for the rental of her store, she told Michael on the top left that she will only open her store there if they allow her to serve rice water to seniors, because she noticed that seniors need to take their medication and they often like to do that with some rice water, whereas sometimes the kopitiam boss may not like that the economical rice hawker provides such liquids because then they don't buy drinks, right? But Michael was very positive about it. And so it was very interesting how hawkers actually played a role in negotiating for some like services or something like a sort of free service for the seniors here for their daily life. And so that led me to think about beauty in community care, because this is another part of our work. When I said at the beginning that we kind of have one foot in the community through the kind of work that we do in ethnography, in participatory design. And last year, we're working closely with the Care Lab from Barcelona, Laszlo and Lashmi, for the Rainbow Center. And we were working on designing services for the graduates of the school for special needs. And these are some concepts. They are not real or final, but it made us think a lot about our society today. So the left side is inspired by a practice that was in Scotland when a group of caregivers, parents of children with disability, approached their local Starbucks and say that, can we have an inclusive hour every Thursday? Just 1 hour will do. We just want to hang out there with our kids and they can be happy on their own, and we can also get to hang out and share our stories. And if you support us, then let the other customers know that we're going to be there, and our children may be a bit noisy, but it would be, they would be welcome. And Starbucks said okay, and that was how a very natural community happened and started gathering, and made us think about how we could bring such ideas into Singapore, how we can think about what kind of jobs persons with disabilities can do, and maybe that requires a brainstorming session with companies who are willing to provide those jobs, to brainstorm what kind of jobs we can create. And sometimes I try to bring some of that beauty in learning from such community projects into the classroom, so that my students can get a sense of it too. But it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to bring such topics without them experiencing it themselves. So this is an exercise I do sometimes, which is an exercise on empathy. I had students who were going to design installation in collaboration with National Museum to walk around the museum for a couple of hours, an entire morning actually, in the footstep of 6 extreme users. So this is, obviously this student is masquerading as somebody who is visually impaired. So we gave him props, and the glasses only has small tiny holes that he can look out through. And this is a domestic worker and a person with disability. This is a pregnant mom, and the female student on the right has weights on her wrist and her ankle, 2 kg on each side. So she is a senior person with, weighted, to let her feel how tired you can be so quickly, as an older person. And this is a mom with a pram. I don't think you can see it here. Yeah, this is a mom with a pram, so she has to push the pram everywhere she goes. And it was a really nice project. At the end of the day, some of them even, one of them actually wrote a poem. The boy that was masquerading as the domestic helper, wrote this poem on the right, as he sat there thinking about, you know, if I am alone in Singapore, how much I would miss my family back home. And some of them, as you can see, the middle picture is the person in a wheelchair and how he felt when he's at a much lower height than everyone else, and he felt really lonely. And then suddenly the bus driver stopped in front of him and asked him if he wanted to board the bus. But he was just sent there on a contemplation mission from us. So he wasn't going to board the bus, but he was so touched that the driver stopped to ask him. Yeah, so these are some experiences that I find are also moments of beauty. And of course, beauty is, as we talk about this, is in the living and the leaving well, right? Having a good life, but also having a good death, if you can say. And this is a project that we have been supporting, collaborating with Drama Box and Arts Walk for 3 years. Well, the project has been running, is still running today for more than 10 years. But we were involved mainly in the Chong Pang and Telok Blangah Crescent installations. So in these projects, artists would go in to work with the seniors in the neighborhood where they touch on topics around end-of-life issues. And then these installations, these design projects that's done with the community are then brought back into the void deck spaces. And we act as the spatial designer to create kind of like a journey through the neighborhood, where the neighborhood is people in the community gather for a period of time to discuss all these topics about end of life. So these are flowers that we place around the neighborhood to guide them towards a different installation and void deck. And it goes from as small as the installation you saw in a pavilion to something as big as this at Telok Blangah Crescent, where there is a theater show going on. There is almost like a musical theater. There is art installation at the top. You can see this little gravestone that is done by 3 pumpkins, where they are touching on end-of-life issues for children. So children who have to deal with the passing of family members, and so on and so forth. And often these theater, participatory theater ends with a discussion where we engage with the community on these topics. And this project was actually brought to Venice Biennale as part of the Singapore Pavilion. And I just wanted to share some of and it was recently brought back to Singapore, and it was just on show in the URA Center. The whole entire experience was kind of condensed into this memento mori of lively leaves that would eventually wilt over 2 weeks. And visitors are encouraged to leave a post-it note on what they think living is and what they think dying is. And these are some of their comments. Some of them are quite funny. You can take a look. Just checking the time. Yeah, so all the greatest heroes die. There's an Yin Yang logo there, and dying is fun. Someone said dying is not a cycle. It's a single moment. You only die once, you only live once. Yeah, dying is a new life again. Yeah, it's very interesting to see what people write. Many of them are probably younger audiences. So I think that brings me to the end of my slides. I just want to give you a snapshot of what life is, because the topic is life is beautiful, right? Not just about beauty, but life. And currently I'm in Berlin and I'm here with my young child, so 3-year-old. And aside from that, I have to do my studies. And just this last 2 weeks, we were in the forest observing the tree cutting in a learning forest. And then we went to the right side, as you can see, with the professor on wood science to look at some of the specimens that we got from the forest through an electron microscopy. So that was, for me, that was incredible, because it goes so deep. Actually, I think we were looking at a beetle, so a dead beetle, and you can see the feelers. And then also the top, that beautiful video of the jellyfish, that was a trade fair that I went to recently on robotics. And I was just sitting there for an hour watching all these robots that were designed, inspired by nature, that was activated all around us. Yeah, so that's a snapshot of my life right now. And I think it's, I think it's pretty beautiful. That's all for now.
Thank you, Wendy, for the very insightful and inspiring sharing. Now, may I invite also Eugene and Mike to come on so that we can have a discussion together. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we do have a few questions from the audience, but before I attend to their questions, I just want to open up this topic about nostalgia and heritage businesses, because it is kind of like a common thread between what Mike was, how he was very inspired by Tiong Bahru, which is, the nostalgia for the neighborhood there, and also about, you talked about the Kueh shop that, it's there and it's closing and all that. And Wendy, of course, you are no stranger to heritage businesses. You have developed the chess set with the craftsman, the bronze craftsman in lavender, right? And also some rattan pieces, if I'm not wrong. So, and also, I think, Wendy, you had a really interesting quote in one of your interviews. You said that the need for local designers to balance international materials and technology and localized crafts and industries will be pertinent in our next decade of transformation. I thought that is really interesting. So I think what this topic about life is beautiful. Life is only beautiful when we have the old and the new. But Singapore is modernizing so fast, and we are losing so much of our cultural heritage. And since that we love, like Wendy, you were talking about how familiarity is something that we all love, the sense of nostalgia. So I personally do lament a lot about this loss at this rapid speed. So I want to ask you guys, like, what do you guys feel about this? And also that what is it that we can do as designers to kind of bridge this gentrification of the city at a rapid speed, and also our love for nostalgia? So maybe we'll start with Mike and Eugene.
I guess it's a reality that we are losing a lot of what we used to have, what we used to enjoy and cherish. Maybe when we were young, we didn't cherish them as much as we do now. And because of technology changes, because of lifestyle changes, we are losing them. So I guess one way to kind of retain them to some degree is to re-express them using different materials or different forms. And I think that's what Mike does a lot in his work, using prints, patterns to bring back what's familiar. And I know exactly what you just said, Kelly, about how we often lament that a lot of things are gone, what we used to see in the environment. We have a kind of a passion project called Titfa, doing metal grills, the old style metal grills that were used to be done by hand. And for a period of time, we were working on projects recreating old patterns using actual techniques like in the yesteryears. So I remember once when a customer came to our shop and he saw this metal grill pattern, and he just stood there and tried very hard to recall where he had seen the pattern before. And after about 10-15 minutes of trying, he finally realized that that was the grill pattern he saw at his old school, which is on Queen Street. I think it's called 222 Queen Street. So he suddenly remembered that when he was a schoolboy, every Wednesday he had this assembly on the top floor of the school building, and they had to go up this staircase, and they will always see this grill pattern on the window. And that brought back a flood of memories for him of school days, and it was really nice to see that someone looking at just a pattern can feel so much warmth and nostalgia, and kind of it brought him back to those days when he was younger. I guess that's one of the best ways to hold on to these things that we have lost, like you said. Yeah.
Thanks, Eugene. Wendy?
Wow, that's a big topic, and I don't know if there's a solution, but I think it's also about understanding. I think what Eugene was just sharing about how just a simple textual material can make you remember, and how important memories memories are to us, because basically we're living in a city that has very little past that reminds us of where we grew up, where we studied. I don't even know if my old school is still around, and that's very disturbing, right? Because I go to Buenos Aires, it's the entirely opposite. You have restaurants cafes that were there from the beginning, and the same waiter is still there. And the waiter remembers my husband, who was there as a young child. That's incredible. Like, you step into a cafe and someone can say hi to you and say that, hey, I saw you grew up. And I think that's why, for example, Ahua was so did not want to stop working as a hawker, because in the hawker center, that's where he grew up, and he feel connected there, as compared to if he were to retire and just hang out at home. And as we look at social care for seniors, I think that is really important, like that familiarity of their neighborhoods. But also, I mean, in this pandemic, we understand that the local is really important, because what we saw happen when the global supply chain broke down. But also, when you lose this kind of craft, what you lose is also the material knowledge and the repairing culture, right? So with our grandparents' generation, they definitely were more careful with the things that they use, because they not only do they know how to repair some of it, like if they have a broken part of their shirt, but they are also able to discern quality, because they know how to make some of these things. And hence the consumption culture is very different. They're a lot more frugal than we are. And so I think it's about understanding that when we're losing these craft culture, we're not just losing the craft, we're actually losing material knowledge, we're losing repairing culture, we're losing this sensitivity to understanding how things are made. And we are then actually also in some ways supporting a consumption culture that is just use and throw, right? And I think when we can connect the dots, then we can see why it's so important to retain these crafts.
But I guess the retaining part is the tough part, right? Like, Singapore is inscribed as our hawker culture is inscribed in UNESCO, but all our old hawkers are dying and nobody want to continue, and we have foreigners taking over the business. And so I think for me that is quite sad, and kind of like it loses its authenticity, right? I mean, because a lot of these heritage businesses usually are sort of family passed down and all that. But I mean, even for our hawker culture, it's kind of like losing. So this crafts, okay, but for the hawker one, right? I think our government is trying to make some of the cooking schools in Singapore, like the older hawkers to go and teach, something like that, if I'm not wrong. Do you think that the same thing can happen with our craftsmen? Because like recently I met this rattan guy in Kampong Glam. He's this old man who makes rattan things, and he has no apprentices. Nobody wants to do it, and he said, I just do until I cannot lah. Then that's it. And I feel so sad. Like it will be lost forever. You see, so. I mean, things like that. Do you think that we can take a similar approach, like getting the polytechnic students, to learn from these masters, or what can we do? What can we propagate as designers?
I think the problem is actually very practical problems. I mean, it's a new generation of youngsters who may not want to go through all that training and be in a career that's going to be full of hard work. Like when we were remaking all those window grills upstairs in our shop house, I mean, at a certain point we had to stop because there's no manpower, there's not enough space. So it's a very practical issue for Singapore. I mean, space, manpower. I mean, unless we somehow have, we can create a hinterland where space is cheaper, where people can take time to experiment, to learn, and to create, then there is a possibility that we can see some of this craft returning and interest in the craft returning as well. Otherwise, given what we are facing in Singapore, it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, so we have Design Council people here today. Hopefully, they will help us with some space and maybe include some of this kind of compulsory workshop kind of curriculum for design students, because they need to use their hands, right? I mean, everybody just draw, sketch up, rhino. But, you know, we're all kind of losing the touch, right? Yeah, so yes, Felicia and Hannah are there. Wendy, what do you think that we can do, you know, like, or maybe even really just sharing ideas of what maybe the government can also in some ways can help, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is something that's been on my mind for, I would say, a very, very, very long time, because I see a lot of my work in documenting craft, and I did that because I was concerned that it's going to be all gone. Because when I came out as a design student, when I graduated, I still could work with so many craftsmen. And then over the next 10 years, I saw them moving from larger factories to smaller ones to finally closing down. And nowadays with my students, they probably have to do everything online through Alibaba. And there's something very problematic when, as a designer, you need to make things and you're only emailing a manufacturer and you don't get to see the processes yourself. But I also don't think that craft will die off, because I'm also seeing a new generation of designers or artisans who basically came from other fields. They may not have been trained in design, but they decide that they really want to do something that is craft related. And now they want to come back to learn. So I think there's the Design Council knows of you as well, who then go and be an apprentice with a master somewhere. The problem with that is that because the craftsmen themselves, they don't want their children to be doing what they're doing, because they think it's tough work, right? So it doesn't get passed down, and then these crafts get lost, and then 10 years later, someone else come and say, now I'm really interested in learn this. And then what you have is a gap of knowledge. And by this time, when this person wants to learn, their master is gone and all that knowledge is gone. So one possibility is to have a repository of knowledge where we can archive a lot of this knowledge, so that at some point in time, if someone is ready to put aside time to learn this, you know, that knowledge has been archived somewhere and can be learned. That was something that I was thinking about. Another thing is how we may have to think about how we can reevaluate craft, right? So for instance, there's been some scientific research that's coming out about the decreasing sensory abilities of our hands because of all our devices and all that. And you can imagine that in certain fields like medical field, where you're being a surgeon and you need to be very agile with your hands, and you lose a lot of that sensory skills. And would that sensory skills be picked up if you were to learn some craft like sewing techniques from a seamstress? You know, can we make this kind of connection between professions that generally get very high value in society and craft, which usually don't get that kind of value, and see that actually craft can help us to regain some of these loss in sensory skills? Just like how I see the kopitiam boss is actually not just selling coffee, he's actually the community manager. He's actually the one that's taking care of the community and linking people up to help that they may need. And so if you start to see the kopitiam as a place for social care, again, the value changes, right? So yeah, these are some thoughts that I've been thinking about.
Thanks for sharing. Just to share, there is an audience member who said, actually, why must it only true poly student can have platform to promote the skills, ma? Okay, so true enough. Again, Hannah and Felicia, take note. Okay. So yeah, so I think actually there are many things that designers, and also we can work hand in hand with the Design Council and all that to kind of you know, promote and propagate and keep some of these crafts alive through different means. So I really hope to see this happening, because watching our only few last craftsmen dying and retiring without any takers to carry on this is quite sad, I think. Yeah. So okay, now we have actually quite many questions from the audience. I shall try to post them to you guys before I go on and, you know, engage you all in own questions. Okay, the first question is to actually Mike and Eugene. Okay, so love your modern take on Singapore heritage and landscapes. I've also just read Onlewo's biography on the Eventbrite website and was wondering, how are the responses of our Singapore heritage inspired designs on the global market? how do you connect with global customers with your designs? Thanks.
So sorry, the first question is how are the overseas markets responding to what we created?
Yes, actually, incidentally, this was one of the questions I jot down to ask you guys. Like, how do foreign, because you guys have a retail arm and you also sell abroad and all that. So how do foreigners respond to designs that are very much inspired by Singapore? And that, I think that's the first part of the question. And so second part is, how do you connect with global audience, global consumers with your designs that are quite Singapore-centric?
I think first of all, the thing is that when we look at international designers, very much their motivation, what they deliver, quite a few of them actually look at what they encounter, their experience back home, and telling their stories through the work. And that's how we make the design scene interesting. Otherwise, then we kind of like with the globalization, how technology is just on the click of a button, we actually get to see each other's world. We are so close in that sense. I think that all the more it calls for the need to share our own experience, our own story, so that the world is more interesting and colorful. And going that route, indeed, we have connected and overseas customers in that way. Also because at one point, whether is it a stopover or is it friends or they themselves or colleagues, they know about Singapore. And so they're happy to actually being able to get to see the other side of designs through a more personal approach. And from that process, discover more about things that they never knew before.
For foreigners who have lived in Singapore, I think they do find it heartwarming. If they find something familiar in one of our patterns, they will feel it's a spark of joy for them. So that's usually the response we get from foreign customers. Yeah.
Thank you for the answer. Next question is, hi Eugene, Wendy, what are your thoughts on designing just for the sake of aesthetics or beauty? Is there value in that? And how would design differ from art in this context? Or are they one and the same? Good question. So maybe we start when okay, Mike, go ahead.
Wendy,
go ahead, because I thought I'll give you guys a break, but if you have something coming up.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, you better KIV that thought. Okay, Wendy.
Well, actually, you can see in what I shared, that was pretty much a sequence of events in my life, right? And you could see that I was beginning to deviate away from just furniture design, which was what I began with. Because I also felt like, is there any value in creating another chair? But I think you always need objects in your life. And even if I'm using the most sustainable material, if it's not designed with consideration of beauty and how useful it'll be in your home, you may not use it for long, right? So I think that knowledge of aesthetics is always there. I think that's what we bring as designers. Design is very different from art. I think in design, we always have the user in mind. I'm not designing something just for myself. I always have to think about who's the audience, who's going to use it, or who is going to use this service, or who is going to be affected in terms of community work, who will be affected by a certain design intervention. Yeah, so in that sense, whereas I see art sometimes as a very, it can be also a very internal journey of the artist, right? Of course, there's also art that is very engaged with the community, but I think design is always tightly connected with the user. Yeah.
I think just to follow up on what Wendy says, the last point about the difference between a designer and artist. I think half the time when I'm creating patterns, my own stories, my own experience, and I think that I hope that this experience that I feel, I can able to pass this down and move some people, and let them say, that, hey, yeah, I mean that's what I think so too. So indeed, sometimes I find that I'm not sure whether what I create at the end will resonate or not. So in that way, it is also no less stress in that sense, because then I do it without much kind of expectation. So like the recent one, if you heard the bird singing, I mean that's what, yeah, I think that's really beautiful experience. And so of course, as what I do, I can try to control and make it more effective by looking at the colors, the shapes, as well as a write-up, which is usually Eugene helps in writing, because sometimes it's I'm more visual, and putting into words is more difficult for me, and Eugene does the other part. Yeah, so I do think that in what I do, sometimes art and design, it's kind of blurred. But hence, however, if you look at art, then artists, they do face a lot of uncertainties, a lot of risk in that sense, because what they create is pretty much from their own personal perspective, and whether that piece of work that is that process of getting there and completing it, and then putting up in a exhibition, and to find a voice, and to find a collector, the journey is far more unique, yeah, and it is always like a unique piece, yeah. Unless it's a print, then there is maybe a different copies altogether. Whereas designers, yeah, it's kind of different, yeah, compared to artists in that aspect.
Thank you. I guess for designers, there is always also a use value to what you do. That practical aspect has to be integrated into the beauty part as well. So I guess maybe that is the difference between design and art. Okay, the next question is for Wendy. Dear Wendy, really appreciate how your work is so informed by stories and experiences of others. Was this always something important for you in your journey as a designer, or did it form along the way?
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I mean, design, I always see design different from art in the sense that it is with the user in mind. And sometimes in the design process, we are taught to think about personas, especially, let's say we think about design and marketing and communication of a product. And I personally find personas really difficult to work with, because it's so much of a made up person, right? And that's why I really need to know who is the real person I'm going to design this for. And sometimes that person may be me, maybe someone like me who is the mother juggling a lot of things. But oftentimes it requires me to do some ethnographic interviews, or to get into the community to observe how people live their life in order to know what they really need. Yeah, and because of this process, you will naturally gather all these stories that inform the work. Yeah, so somehow that was the process.
Thank you. Okay, so this funny question is maybe directed to Hannah and Felicia. Can recent retirees who wish to work again be encouraged to take up crafts apprenticeship? So I think things like that, we really need sort of, I think, some initiatives from the government to drive this, because I think as individual designers, maybe at best we can help to facilitate these workshops and these sessions, but it's very hard for us as designers individually to kind of conduct these workshops, or bring this to a bigger platform. Do you guys agree with me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So So I think this is a very interesting food for thought that which I think which is what talk sessions like that are about. You know, we also want to know what the general public thinks of design, because some of them may want to do something as such and all that. And then I think it is the designers can work with Design Council and maybe other government organizations like I don't know, to kind of make these things happen, to create platforms, to bring design to even a wider sort of group of people who like to practice. Yeah. So that question is actually for Hannah and Felicia. Yes. So okay, more questions. I think. Oh no, this is not a question. This one is a note to Onlewo. It says. Agreeing with Onlewo, art is truly problem solving all the time. Art is truly problem solving. Okay, so actually, Wendy, there were a few questions that you answered in the group chat, but I think we should bring it up because this is for actually general sharing. So it asks Wendy, how do the Germans sustain their high level of craftsmanship? Through the master apprenticeship programs. Can we do it here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think the German education system is quite well known to have a very, very good vocational path for students who choose not to take the university academic route. And I think what's very good here is the societal perception of such a pathway. People don't think that this is not a good pathway or not a good prospects, but when you go on a vocational path, you just learn from apprentice up and you can be appreciated by society. And I think that appreciation is actually the most important transformation that needs to take place in Singapore with when it comes to vocational schools. But at the same time, I want to say that craft is on a demise everywhere, like in Japan, in Germany, it's the same. I was at a glass factory a couple of years back, and it was set up 450 years ago. Like there are 15 generations of owners. And at the time when I interviewed the owner, he told me that he hoped that his children will take over, and but he will not force them. And then recently I found out that they have closed down, and I was really upset about it because I thought that they have lasted 15 generations. How come they cannot last one more? But I guess the cost of things are going up, and German craftsmanship cannot be, the labor cannot be cheap, and maybe they can't deal with the numbers, and they are also managing the forest where the trees are used in the furnace and to make the molds to blow the glass. So it's an entire ecosystem in Bavaria over there, and when something can't work, the entire system, just can't run in that same way anymore. And yeah, so even for a 450-year-old factory, they are dealing with the same issues. There isn't really a good answer. Yeah.
Because they don't have Design Council to support them.
I guess maybe what's possible maybe for Design Council to promote craft as a hobby, as a passion. Because if we see craft as a livelihood, then we get very scared off by the concept. I mean, I'm going to work in this for the rest of my life. But if it's craft as something that you can enjoy, you learn, and you can create things for yourself, not necessarily and become a livelihood, then we can probably find solutions to bringing back some of this crafts and passing on the skills, passing on the knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely, fully agree. Anna and Felicia taking notes there, so I think we're in good hands. I want to touch a little bit on this topic that I thought we can discuss a little bit. It's about the sharing economy that we're in today. Wendy, your Kopi Cup, the video that we showed us, which was very, very inspiring. I understand that you are going through a kind of Kickstarter route to get it funded. So I mean, Kickstarter is, of course, it's not guaranteed. You might get the money, you might not get the money, people might buy it, people might not buy it, but if you really get the money, it really means that people want the product. So that's part one. Then part two is like for Onlewo, you guys have been running a retail shop, you know, and online and all that for a long time, and it's not easy. I know that in Singapore it's not easy. You have to pay rent and and all that. But have you guys considered this going through like this Kickstarter route? Like, what do you both think of the this sharing economy? Are we able to, as designers, harness this to kind of come up with more innovative, bolder, and more experimental things?
I think we are, it definitely has crossed our mind because we have, I mean, we are always itching to try different things. So furniture is one area that we've been trying to explore, and we have some concept. We did think of putting it on platforms like Kickstarters to get orders in, and then we make them, which is also a more sustainable approach to production.
Wendy, how's your coffee cup coming along?
Trying to juggle family life and all that, and also doing this thing that we've been saying that we'll be doing. No, we are working on it. Yeah, I think it's very much about for Kickstarter for designers. It's very much about bringing the rights of production and distribution into the hands of the designer, because usually we have to find producers who would be willing to edit the product, and then we just earn royalties if we can make a sale. And I think what Kickstarter really allows us to do is to have this direct connection with the consumers, to be self-producers, and to also really produce when we know that there is demand, right? And I think that's very important for us, especially because Kopi Cup is really, it's about social innovation. It's about having a cultural icon for sustainable practices. So if the community feel that this could be a cultural icon and they support it, then it makes sense for us to do it. But if the community doesn't feel that way, then, you know, it doesn't make sense to just market another product. Yeah, and we truly believe in that little handle, which we find in many of our packaging design in Singapore, and how functional it is. Yeah, so it's definitely a great platform for us to be able to reach out to the people. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's really an open discussion, but I just thought that, you know, such kind of platforms actually can encourage more sort of bolder and experimental things from designers, because I mean, if it's good, then people will support, right? It's called sort of like donation kind of thing. Yeah, so I thought it's just wanted to get your take on it. Okay, back to this Q&A. We have a very warm audience today. Actually, someone made a comment about the craftsman workshop thing. It says, we need minimum wage for craftsmen women to succeed. I don't know why. Okay, very random comment. But we have a question here. Okay, thanks so much, Wendy, Eugene, and Mike, and myself. Okay, any advice to younger designers who plan to work in your same fields? So maybe we start with Eugene and Mike.
I think to recap our journey, we both started without the relevant background. And so I think this will apply to not just students who are graduating, but for anybody that wants to have a career switch. I think we always think that the way that to go is just be more mindful about who you are. What really draws you, motivates you, and gives you that energy to wake up and to keep doing it. I think that is a clear sign that you're onto something that makes you feel alive. I mean, when I say alive, I don't. We are living every day, but what's the moment where you feel alive? I mean, that is really a sign that you're on the right path. And second thing is that just do a bit more research, because internet, there's so much out there, whether it's in makers, materials, grants, or we started with a small pop-up at Design Center, curated at the time by Farm, Singapore. And I mean, that's also that I feel that it's also a good way for anyone that wants to start something in design field. Don't wait until everything is perfect, the sums are right, the weather is good, then you think about making the next step. Yeah, I feel that sometimes it's really about going there, doing it, and then learning it along the way. And then once you press the button, the cast, I always like to use this example about, yeah, once you start the engine, you're on the journey, you get to see a lot of people coming up to your car, hopping in, going down, telling you stories, telling you ideas. Along the way, you see sceneries, you see things, and then that opens up your mind, opens up your eyes, and gives you more ideas. And enjoy the ride. I think definitely you have to enjoy the ride. And by that, it means that not to overburden yourself with commitment, investment. Look at things as scalable, but not something that you need to make a lot to kickstart, because that will add a lot of stress. It will cloud your mind. You can't think straight, and you get stressed out. You get beaten, and then you got storage issues and all that. So I think it's a philosophical thing as well. Doing this track to understand yourself, to give yourself, to be kind to yourself, and give yourself some time, and do a lot of research and look at what people do. And I really love your podcast, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I hear everybody's stories. It's like, wow, okay, you know, having a chance.
Someone is listening to it.
I mean, I'm telling people that this is such a good podcast. If you want to go know about a bit more about who are Singaporean designers, what do they do, and why are they doing all these things, it's so interesting. And actually, from there, you get a lot of inspiration, and you realize that actually it's not difficult. I mean, it's not easy, but it is not that daunting a journey, actually.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I agree. I think actually from the interviews that we have so far, every designer really just take the plunge, and just feel your way along the way. You might fall down, but so what, right? Then you just have to pick yourself up. Yeah, so that's a good advice. Wendy, what's your advice?
I was actually gonna wait for you to say more as well, because I want to hear from Kelly. Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that Mike and Eugene were sharing, and I think if I had looked back and tried to plot to where I get here, I don't think I would have gotten here, because I didn't really know where I was gonna end up. But I know that I will put one foot in front of the other, and I know that this is more or less in the direction I want to go. And I think what's very important is habits, like having some kind of habits or practice, because you're never going to achieve something like out of the blue. I actually don't believe in talent. Can I say it? So controversial. I believe in hard work. I believe that there must be conscientious practice. I believe that as a design lecturer, I believe that if I can create certain creative pedagogies, then anyone can be creative. Like there's no such thing as, oh, because you're so talented, so you're more creative. Yeah, so if I have a very unevenness of creativity, then maybe I didn't plan my class lesson well, that's how I see it. And yeah, so in that same way, and in this way, the creative lesson or method then is the habit that you practice daily, right? So for example, I mean, Singapore can be very stifling because the society reminds you a lot about a lot of things that sometimes if you look back, you may think these are not so important, but somehow the society keeps reminding you about money, about things that you need to get, and then you need to step out for a while. And I think that's why right now I'm doing my master's in Berlin. And from time to time, I actually plan my year to really just be away for a while, because it really gives me clarity of mind of what I really want to pursue, what motivates me to wake up every day. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Wendy. I fully agree. I think what a lot of people do not know is that designers work very hard, and it's actually a routine for us. Some people think that we just sit there, wait for inspiration to come or whatever, but I mean, what I have to explain to a lot of my non-designer friends that even there's no inspiration, we have to keep trying and try until something comes along. Because if we just sit there and daydream, then nothing is ever going to happen. So I think this is also why I want to kind of like push this kind of podcasts and sessions and all that, because people have you know, they have very sort of unclear ideas of what designers do. They confuse us with artists and all that, but little did they know that a lot of us work like hell. And sometimes when we couldn't bring in the money, we have to think of other ways, you know, to as Wendy said, you know, put bread on the table, whatever, in order to make things work. So yeah, so it's really not easy, and it's a lot of hard work indeed. So we have very good audience today who stayed with us for 1.5 hours. So to close off the session, I'm just going to ask one last question to both of you. What revolution would you hope to see in the Singapore design industry? Maybe we'll start with Mike and Eugene.
Very chin. Eugene.
My mind goes blank.
I mean, surely there's something you hope that would change, right?
Maybe I start first, and probably this is something that connects with you guys.
Thinking about it, you know, not just now, like something she's like, I want to revolutionize. Yeah. Okay.
No, because this was something that Kelly reminded me that I was saying in the interview, and I'm hoping and I believe it's going to be happening. I don't know if it's in that scale for a localization or a local revolution, right? Where we can look at everything from a more local perspective. And that also comes from social sciences. Like there's a lot of discussion about how climate change is such a global issue that it makes you paralyzed. Like a lot of Generation Z, people who are the young generations who are very passionate about doing something for climate change, they actually feel very depressed, that some of them actually think that nothing they do will make a difference. And that is the problem when you think in a very global way. But if you can think in a very local way, then you can see that in many small ways, there are actions that you can take. And actually, it is only possible to take actions in a local manner, right? And I really hope we can see that revolution of like local materials, local craft, local techniques, or local innovation, or even understanding what the Singapore has around it and what it can bring. Yeah.
Thank you. Eugene and Mike?
Well, well, if you asked me 5 years ago, yeah, I would have said we would hope that Singaporeans will come to embrace local designers and their works. But at this point, that would have been my wish, you know, for a revolution in the design scene. But today, at this point, I can quite happily say that our wish has come true. When we first started, 80% of our customer base were expats. But by year 4 and year 5, it totally changed the other way. It means 80% were Singaporeans. So thanks to a lot of efforts by the agencies, including Design Singapore, the awareness, the appreciation of local designers and their works have grown a lot in the last 5 years. Of course, we would wish for more, but still, I think we have come a long way from the time when Singaporeans always think better of overseas brands, overseas designers. But I think today, Singaporeans have come around to recognizing that Singapore designers can create very good works and very world-class works as well. So I mean, I'm not exactly answering your question, but I'm just being thankful that we have progressed that way. And yeah, a lot of it has come, a lot of that came from government's effort, and we are really appreciative.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to chip in here. So the revolution I hope to see for a start is ban free pitching. I think this is a really, really bad practice. I think all designers should be treated as professionals. You will walk into a lawyer, you tell them to propose first and see whether you want to pay or not. Try lah. Go to a doctor and say, propose how you'll cut me up first, then I think about it. Try lah. Go to hawker and say, I taste your hae mee first before I want to buy it or not. Try lah. Why are we as designers not treated properly as professionals? The moment you step into my office, I'm going to start charging by the hour. Every single question you ask me, I have a right to charge, you know.
Totally.
So don't expect us to put in 2 freaking weeks of works to propose, to kowtow to you, to show you what we can do. And then you are actually inviting like 20 people to show you. That is so not right. So that is the revolution I really hope to see. Not stop, not minimize, but ban free pitching. Okay. I think
Yeah, totally. I think that's
Fully support.
yeah, fully support, right? Yeah, I mean, really, it's about time. So, okay, with that, I really want to thank Mike, Eugene, and Wendy for today's very lively discussion. And thank you so much for your heartfelt and insightful sharing. I had a good time. I hope all the audience had a good time as well. So thank you a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Wendy.